Hi everyone. Today we are going to be doing Alfonso Cuaron's tremendous Children of Men. Just an astonishing fucking film, man. It is so good. Um, Very underrated. Somehow it is sort of popular, so it always pops up on the best of the 21st century. Sort of it came out in '06 lists. Deservedly so. Yet I don't know. Somehow I still feel like this is sort of underrated. It's really. I think this film's like as good as The Godfather or Citizen Kane. I mean, it's almost that. It's really on that level. Um, what to say? All right, where to start with the Children of Men? I guess. Look, first of all, this is a. I mean, it works on many levels, right? I mean, universally popular. I've never had a complaint about teaching, making my students watch Children of Men. The film works on multiple levels. It works as like an action movie because I mean, and man, but boom, boom, time after time, right? That first fucking explosion. Then you get when Julian gets shot, when Luke and the boys show up at the house, and just over. I mean, there's about 6 or 8 of these. Just surprise. So, with that car on fire comes rolling right down the hill. A surprise, and then surprise, and then surprise. And it really does. So many films. It's not even even really enjoy. And I like a good dumb action movie, honestly. It's definitely one of the great guilty pleasures in life, as far as I'm concerned, is a good old fashioned popcorn movie, and a lot of those are very predictable, and that's sometimes often what's fun about them, right? The good guy's gonna win and kiss the girl, and the bad guy's gonna get killed in a really cool, hopefully drawn out, gruesome way we could all enjoy. Boy, not this. This movie just surprises you with its twist and twist and twist. It works as a future sort of a dystopian future movie, right? An apocalyptic movie. It works totally on that level. As well as it works as a bit of a sci-fi picture, right? And a future that really, I mean, okay, as long as you can buy into the conceit of no more fertility, all women have gone infertile, really is, kind of believable, I think. And so much of this world seems very recognizable. And boy, again, written, and, this film was made in, I don't know when it's based on a book, by the way, by P.D. James. It's supposed to be terrific. I have not read the book. I know Miss J had a bit of a problem with Cuaron's choice to, in the book, it's actually the men that are infertile, not the women. Although I think he got a lot out of making it women, right? Because we don't get Key, with that. So. Or I guess you could get her, but it would be the man that was. I don't know. I think it works better. I think that was the right choice on the filmmaker's part. And listen, some of the things he was trying to do in this film. One of his comments was he wanted to make the anti-Blade Runner. If anyone's ever seen Blade Runner, it was one of the another great film, by the way. But it came out in '81, well ahead of its time, and it was this future where human replicants had sort of a. We're on the Earth, and this guy, the Blade Runner, had to go kill them, the last 4 that were left. And it's a terrific movie, a moody movie, but it's also this gorgeous, color-soaked, atmospheric movie. And I think when he said he wanted to make the anti-Blade Runner, this film, it really does, we get, at the beginning, this is a movie, and again, we get that's the other thing, this is what's known in Hollywood as a big premise, right, where, all the women on Earth have gone infertile, there's been some sort of pandemic, where there have not, women no longer carry children, and there has not been a child born in 18 years and something like 6 months, right? And the film opens with baby Diego, who had been the youngest person on Earth, has just died. Again, we're getting Theo, and again, Theo, the name, a lot of the things I guess to keep in mind here, as far as a filter to view this through. First of all, this is asking the question: so, how much of our future is based on children being born? Meaning, based on the future itself, and which is hope, and children always being the ultimate expression of hope. And this has now become a hope. And you've seen what would really happen to the world, in a world without hope, and a world without children. and boy, it's not doing well, right? As told in this story, Britain is the last country standing. Everyone else has fallen. We get those. The film opens right with a bunch of sort of montage of world news programs showing basically the entire world is on fire and all governments have collapsed. The only one sort of that seems to still be standing is Britain, and they're not holding on. It seems like by much, and they've become a very much a maybe not quite a totalitarian state, but certainly you see how they are having all kinds of refugees, and you're seeing how those refugees are being treated, which is not particularly well. And again, there's no easy answers there because you get the feeling that if this really happens, I'm not sure you could, if you were the last, especially Britain's not really, it's not America either, it's not that big a country. If they really were the last one standing, they might have to be this terrible to the Fugees, as they call them, the refugees trying to come in. But on the other hand, none of us can watch the way they're being treated and think it's okay, right? Anyway, so. It's and again, a world without hope, and this is also told sort of through. This is a kind of a very much kind of loosely told this way, but a religious parable, a Christian sort of parable. We get Key as the sort of virgin mother, or the anti-virgin mother, as it turns out, right? But the miracle birth, right? That we get going, and we get the Theo, again, the name Theo, theogony, theology, theocracy, right? All it means the one or God itself. So that name, has weight. I'm trying to remember this. Sorry, I have some notes written over here as well. Julian, who's the sort of grieving mother, and you get Luke, who's a fantastic sort of villain, and made all the more so because this is not an evil man, but he's been corrupted by ideological thinking. He's become an ideological extremist, which, by the way, is one of those things where it usually starts off with the best of intentions. We saw this with communism all through the 20th century, right, in the world, where but it seems to end up, basically Stalin killed more people than Adolf Hitler. A lot of people don't know that. And he has been utterly corrupt. And again, Luke, you could obviously one of the four gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or one is Luke. Although I also wonder if, I think he's really referring here to. I don't think Luke is referring to that Luke. I think Luke is referring to Lucifer, the fallen angel who becomes Satan in the Bible. And again, Lucifer was the best of the angels. And boy, Luke is capable and competent and kind of interesting, and he cares. This is, he really does want a better world, but he ends up doing horrible, terrible things to do it, and he seems to get worse and worse as the film goes on. You see how he just murders cops in cold blood, kills the beloved Jasper, who we'll get to in a couple minutes for us, and risks that baby's life, to keep it on his side of the fight. And again, to call Luke Lucifer, I think would have been a little too on the nose and obvious. I think but I do think that's probably who that is referencing. But back to Theo. We start with Theo. And what is, again, this is a world without children, right? And Theo is going to be the man who ends up saving the humanity's future, hopefully. We're not sure of it for sure at the end. The end is a little murky, but I sense that that it's at least probable that Key's at least going to give birth to that child, even though the world's obviously going to hell in a handbasket and is going to have a lot of problems. But Theo has lost a child. Right, he is the grieving father, and he's estranged from his wife, who he's obviously, as soon as we see them, we know it becomes obvious, right? He's still so in love with her, and he wants his family back, and he is suffering. He's self-medicating in the beginning, and you see, and I'll kind of go through this the major scenes maybe and circle back to that amazing opening in the beginning, but you see, after that first explosion, right? And you see where he goes to. He runs to his, I guess I sense, when I looked, I haven't read the book, as I said, and I believe in the book this is somehow this is his drug dealers where he buys his maybe his pot he's buying off the guy, and Jasper is dealing pot, right? He's and smoking it often and rather enjoying himself. But boy, couldn't we all use a Jasper in our life, right? I mean, he's he runs there, and as I take it in the film, he's probably like a stepdad or something who had married his parents. I'm saying that because he never calls him dad; he always calls him Jasper. But you go into that home, and man, it is a whole other feel right in that home. Again, boy, can I spend the weekend at home with Jasper? I think was good. Gorgeously played by Michael Caine. Just brilliant performance. He claims to have based some of it on John Lennon, actually, the John Lennon, whose song "Here Comes the Lucy," by the way, ends the film. Ends the film. And again, John Lennon, known as a peace, love, even though, by the way, he's a bit of a volatile figure, often John Lennon through his life, but as known to the world as we think of him now, is the man who preached peace. Give peace a chance. Right, one of his famous songs, and love, and wanted to make and was hopeful. And what did Theo used to be? He used to be a political activist. And again, I don't think. And there were some conservative critics had some issues with this, as thought there was a sort of a shallow political reading. But I got to be honest with you, I think they were giving it a shallow political reading. I don't think Cuaron was really doing that, because we don't get a hook. Because honestly, the liberals in this film are the fishes, right? Also religious connotation, right? The fishes being a religious sect, if you Greek Orthodox Church, and they are the ones sort of. They're the rebels, and the state is trying to sort of keep them down, and doing so in a brutal way. This state is presented as a brutal regime. But anyway, he goes to Jasper's. Theo, as he's going, had been a political activist, and I think the point here is that what political activists, their salient, maybe main quality would be hope, right? And we're in a world where the hope is gone, and where children aren't being born anymore, and we get a man who's lost a child and who is utterly hopeless, who is completely self-medicating, and we see him even when we first get to Jasper, just an immediately lovable character right away, and also a kind and good man. He's not, he's a comic presence, but he's also very resourceful, right? Jasper manages to, when Luke and the guys show up at the house later, that crazy alarm. Again, it's wild and crazy and sort of funny. It's also effective. They don't get the jump on Jasper at all, those guys. And Jasper gets the rest of them to safety, and then sacrifices himself. Dies in the tough one. Kind of splayed out too, right? It's sort of like a crucifix on the ground a little bit. But again, Theo is being, and he's such a kind, benevolent, nurturing sort of a father figure to Theo, who's being cynical. If you notice that whole bus ride back, to Jasper's house, oh please, what a wank! Even again, the youngest child has died, who is a kind of who become kind of a sacred figure, right, in this film, and in this world as it's presented. And he's, oh please, he was a wanker. He's you're kind of demeaning him, and therefore demeaning the sacred object of this, the sacred object of this world. And again, Jasper, he doesn't, give him a lecture. Oh, please, you shouldn't talk like that. No. But he was the youngest wanker. Kind of makes a joke about it the whole time. He's just trying to make Theo laugh, right, over and over again. And as they're back in the house, right, he's so proud of the marijuana he grows, which he calls strawberry cough, and he has cough. And then all of a sudden you see why Theo ran to that house, man. It's a warm house full of plants and animals. And by the way, notice how animals are treated in this film too, right? And you see a couple of there's a dog, I think it's a dog in Jasper's house that jumps up onto the couch with with Theo, and right away, and he's sort of petting him. And later, and right at the scene where Key's maybe in the most trouble with the fishes, right? And they're calling it a flag to use to bring everyone together. Little kitten, right, starts to sort of crawl up. It may have been a cat at Jasper's house. Tries to crawl up Theo's leg. And there's two dogs too that bark, and the man even remarks that owns the house, right? And this is at the safe house for Luke, which isn't safe at all. He's going to murder Theo there. The man who runs that house says, "Oh, they like you. They don't like anybody." So again, we often assign sort of a intuitive insight that adults somehow lose in children and in certain domesticated animals like that, right? And the fact that they're little, and again they're often the kitten. It's often baby animals that are also drawn to Theo. But Theo, at least we see him sort of give this hearty belly laugh, at Jasper's place. But soon enough, the hood is over his head and he's off being kidnapped. And a scene that again is harrowing and also sort of comical. We meet Julian, who is his estranged wife and a grieving mother of the lost child as well. A child named Dylan. All right, boy, Dylan could have. I'm guessing with all the other names that these names were chosen on purpose. And you can think of Bob Dylan, obviously the great protest songwriter of this and other songs, but one of the great singer-songwriters this country's ever produced, possibly Dylan Thomas. Dying of the Light, right? That could potentially work. Music and sound is used so well in this. You know what? When I circle back to that, I'm starting to jump around a little bit. But anyway, we meet. I'm sorry, Julian. I don't know why I have trouble remembering. No, because I can't connect her to any real biblical figures. There might be, but I don't know it. But anyway, she's grieving, but she has not given up. She still is an activist. Very end. As it turns out, and he doesn't. She wants his help to help a refugee get somewhere. Get across. They're going to be what she calls the Human Project. The Human Project seems to be this mythical sort of collection of people, and it's supposed to be all the best sort of scientists and artists, kind of a colony of them somewhere. And nobody's 100% sure if it's real. But Julian thinks it's real, and that she's got and Julian apparently can contact this mythical, almost sainted band of people in this world, right? And she wants to get this a refugee. She doesn't really tell Theo why. He says no, but he is broke, and she tells. So again, in a cynical way, takes on the job for the money, but not just for the money, is it? And it really isn't, because he's still very. We see very quickly as soon as they're together that he wants to. He wants to get back together with Julian. Again, she is the matriarch sort of figure of the fishes and the leader of the clan, but she is about to be sort of I guess there's a little coup about to happen in their world, and then Luke is about to usurp her position. And again, we're in the car, that car with the fire on top, and a bunch of people come, again, almost like primeval men and women or something, come right tearing down out of the woods, all attacking them. And Luke backs up the car, but as it turns out, it's Luke who set this whole thing up. Julian's shot, so but right before that, though, right, we get this tender scene where they almost become a little surrogate family in that car, and it's again Theo and Julian, who both lost their child and are grieving for it, and Theo doesn't even realize Key is pregnant yet, but Julian obviously does, and they're and right away, so the first thing, and Key, who's again going to be the miracle, the Virgin Mary, but she's the anti-Virgin Mary, really, right? Because later, when asked, and how would, by the way, teenagers act in a world where you could not possibly get pregnant? I would say they'd be even more promiscuous than they already are, and they'd be having a lot of sex, and that's what happened to Key. Key was not it was a miracle birth, but it was a degraded version somewhat, right? This is a fallen world, and And she even says, she's like, I don't know, I didn't know half the wankers' names, is what she said. So she was having, a lot of sex with a lot of guys. It was a very casual thing, as would be expected in that world. But while they're in the car, and they do that thing with the ping pong ball, no one else has ever been able to. And again, a lot of sublimated. Right, he's saying Julian promised me some action. He's still being kind of a wise ass to everybody, and sarcasm is kind of how he kind of keeps everybody at arm's length. And she's like, "Oh, you're still." But again, when he says, "Do we have time to stop at a hotel?" Julian promised me a little action later. And again, that's a very disrespectful. Luke was not happy he said that. The others in the car were not happy he said that either. You're not supposed to. She's a very special figure in that world, Julian, and should be respected as such. None of them would ever speak to her like that. So it's a bit almost a sacrilege in a way itself, what he's saying to her. But she doesn't blink, right? She just sort of smiles, looks back at him. You still like it in the afternoon, she says to him, right? And we know that, that, and we can see enough of them that this was a loving relationship. Just didn't survive the death of their child. Most relationships don't. But then they do the thing with the ping pong ball, right? And another erotic, and again, it's a very clever, because it's, obviously if she's like, you're the only one who's ever been able to do this, right? What every guy wants their the woman they love to sort of say to him, about other things. Anyway, but then right after that, they all, when they do it, we get this happy moment where they're all laughing in the car, they're all kind of gelling together, maybe becoming something, and boom, the fiery car comes down, they're going to Julian's shot dead. And they end up at the safe house, where now it doesn't take Theo too long to realize he's going to be the next one dead. But right before that, right, we get the big reveal, and Miriam, who's the nurse, another interesting figure, right, in this, and who's going to be a little bit of our voice connecting to the old. She saw the old world go out. She'd been a maternity nurse when all the miscarriages started, and when all the women went infertile, and she gets an amazing line. We'll get to that when they get to the school. But Miriam calls Theo, takes her into the barn, and what a gorgeous setup this is, right? And Theo goes into the barn, and what is it, right? It is there's a bunch of milk cows in this barn, and they're all being mechanically milked, actually, which again is sort of something kind of unnatural and cold about it. And by the way, we've seen there have been we've seen cat, there's also been like a mad cat, there's been some sort of blight among the cattle, it seems like, in this world. And we've seen piles of cattle, literally, out there, their hooves, all up in the air, like on fire in other scenes. But these ones are alive and well. They're all, obviously, female cows, or milk cows. And he walks in, and there is Key. And she's sort of, back, and there's cows in front of her, and there's cows behind her, and right up on the ceiling, right, you have all those glass containers of milk as they're being milked, and they're sort of like, it's almost as if the cows themselves that are and again, all maternal imagery on top of maternal imagery, and it is like the they're almost protecting her, right, in some way, and they're and they're kind of mooing gently and going, and they're hiding her. We don't really realize what she's doing at first, and then she comes out and she starts undoing, and she's like, Julian told me only to trust you, that if things went bad, only to trust you. She says to Theo, and again, Theo he hasn't been flipped yet. He's about to be, though. He's still being, well, listen, I don't know why they told you that, and I'm a little worried. At this point, Luke has already shot dead two police officers on the side of the street, and pointed the car at Theo and told him, you better get back in the car. So he already knows he's dealing with a very dangerous person in Luke. And at this point, Key is obviously sensing it too. And you do see Key, who's struggling again in a world where there are no other mothers, where she would pick up these sorts of tips. But there still is a sort of deep maternal instinct in her, although she's profane and at times she seems not to have it. But I do think it keeps just kind of coming out in small ways, and then larger and larger ways as the film, I think, goes on. But she's like, Julian told me only to talk to you, only to trust you. So she senses something too. And this is also showing you that Julian sensed something might be amiss too. So she got Theo into that car for a reason. And also the wisdom of Julian, right? That she took, he was acting cynical, didn't give a damn. And she knew, right? That she knew how hurt he was. That was his woman. That was the father of her child, right? So she knew him. But he sees her and she starts, and she's like, she said to help me. And then Theo's like, oh, I don't know why she would have told you that. He's like, look, I'm sure your friends can help it. He just wants to get the hell out of that bar to get away from her. He wants nothing to do with it. All he wants is a ride out of that place and to get away from these people. But she says, wait, and she starts to unbutton her. He's like, whoa, what are you doing? Stop doing it. And he assumes, and so does the viewer the first time, right? That she's going to disrobe and try to seduce him and offer herself to him sexually, right? But she undoes the thing and then sort of turns, and you see the big protruding, nude. That's just this gorgeous scene, right, of the nude girl and pregnant, who's obviously very pregnant, probably within a month or two of delivering. And boy, what a great! Clive Owen does such a good job. The actor who plays Theo in this role, in this scene, a couple of these scenes, but especially this one. And just this look of astonishment, and again, all that cynicism just drains away from him, right? And his mouth falls open, and then Luke kind of comes running in, and he's not real happy that she told him this. And Miriam kind of scolds Luke. She's like, she wanted to tell him. She has a right? Like, he has a lot of standing here as the first. This is the first pregnant woman on Earth in 18 years. And then Luke's sort of like, of course she has. Right, and he kind of handles it well in the moment. He's like, well, now you know what's at stake. Anyway, they go into the house, and then Theo notices, right, the kid coming in on the motorcycle was the one who shot Julian earlier, and he figures out they're going to kill him, and he's like, look, I'm getting out of here. If you want to stay, you can, but then she doesn't. And then once she goes with him, then Theo is going to be all in, and he's going to sacrifice. And again, Theo he's already lost his child. He's going to lose everyone else he loves, right? In this journey here, he's going to lose. He lost Miriam. He's going to lose because from here, they're leaving. They're like, we have to. They make this amazing long shot, right? As they sort of have to push and jump the car that doesn't start for a bit, and Maniac Patrick, who's the main henchman of Luke's, is sort of chasing them and almost getting. Anyway, they barely do escape. They need to find a safe house. Miriam says, and he's like, oh yeah, the last one was so safe. And then he says to him, don't worry, I know where we can go. And of course, where does he go? His safest place, which is Jasper's. And Jasper, who is utterly heroic, right, in these next scenes, and it's just so great. He's like, I mean, first he thinks it is a cover. He thinks we've gotten the government is handing out these pills to commit suicide with where you can pass away peacefully. And he's, anyway, there's a kind of comical scene where he thinks he's dead for a second, but he isn't. His mother, of course, is sort of catatonic. Whatever, something happened to her, and she just sort of stares, and she's just in a kind of constant waking coma. Jasper, meet Key, and he turns and he looks, and Key's now not hiding her pregnant belly anymore. And you just see Jasper's kind of eyes go up, and then the immediate jump cut there is great. You just see Jasper, right? He's got his fucking apron on, and he's got a running around with a big bowl of pasta, and he's always the nurture, right? Feeding everybody, and Key, and again, who's got those brothers? Boy, she knows she's got a good, just laughing and happy anytime she's around Jasper. So is everyone else, and the whole house sort of comes alive, and just again, Jasper's house is about as alive as any place in this world anyway. But Luke and the boys do find them there. Jasper gets them into the car, and he sends them toward a man named Sid now, right? And he said, tell Sid he's a fascist pig. He sells weed to this guy, and who's a guard at the Bells Hill, Bexhill, I think, is the name of the geez, if I got it wrong, I'm sorry. The name of the place they're going, the name of the refugee camp where they're going to try to get a boat from there and meet the Human Project. That's their only shot to find them. They're running out of time. There's a clock ticking here, and again, the storytelling is amazing. Yeah, it's just on its own without all these things. Theo's forced to sort of watch from a distance as Jasper, who does delay Luke and those guys, and dies extremely heroically, but also tragically. It's a tough one to watch. But they do, they get going. They make it. Their next stop is the school, and I guess I'll stop a minute and then talk about the school a little bit. Right, it was just a startling scene, and again in this world, and again, overall, and actually right to this really is sort of a grim. The visual aesthetics of the film really do reflect the grim kind of depression of this world. All the colors seem to have been drained away, and they're all kind of washed out. Right? There's nothing bright and vibrant here. It really is the anti-Blade Runner that way. But we get to the school, and first they park there, and they have to wait a bit. And again, this school's been closed for years because there's no more children. And things are all, there's all kinds of weeds overgrown and everything. And right next to it is a this big sort of rock or metal sculpture of, I think, a Stegosaurus or something, some sort of dinosaur. And again, just a great little touch, because dinosaurs, first of all, it makes complete sense. They're at a grade school because kids love dinosaurs, and so also dinosaurs are the most famous extinct species in that's ever been, right? And so eventually they make their way into the school, and they're walking through the school, and of course the pipes are leaking and water's running. But again, there's water. This is a dead place, but it's almost like there's still sort of life percolating, sort of waiting to sprout underneath it. The kids, there's colors in this place. It's probably the most colorful place in the film. As you go through it, all the children's artwork is still up on the walls, right? And they end up in this one classroom, and the windows are all broken, and you can see Key sitting out there on a swing, kind of holding her pregnant belly, just gently swinging, back and forth. And there's this one, and it's just a brilliant shot. The camera kind of pans right down into it, and we look through the whole. And as it comes going, you notice there's a sort of teardrop shaped hole in the window. And that's where we're looking at the pregnant Keith through as Theo sort of staring out at her, and now he's all in, and he's trying to help them. And then Miriam gets her best moment of the film, where she's like, "Boy, I remember because she was like, I remember that first week we had 4 or 5 miscarriages. I mean, and more than we'd ever had." She says, "Next week there was a few more, and then the next week there was 12. And then she says, I called my sister in Australia. It was the same thing there." And then she sort of gets up, and she's like, and as the laughter drained away from the playgrounds, she sort of looks, and she sort of was staring out at Key again through that teardrop-shaped hole. She was like, "So strange what happens to a world without children's laughter." And just, what's that? Sad, poignant lines there. But again, boom. We never get very peaceful for very long in this. When you hear this loud horn, and he goes out, and there's Sid, who looks like he's about 5 feet high, tiny little guy, but just filled with violence. I don't know the actor's name, but he played the hell out of it. And almost beats Theo. And we see again, Theo's been told that the secret word between them is that he's a fascist pig. Again, a joke, one of Jasper's jokes, but you know what? Not totally a joke. Also giving you some hint that this guy's a dangerous character, and a very violent man. He is a fascist pig. They end up at Bexhill, the refugee camp, and again we walk into there, and it's like this teeming sort of apocalyptic third world place where all these refugees are being sort of forced into this camp. Of course, they're sneaking into it, and Sid's like, I'm not sure why, and I don't want to know why, but he took the money and they drops him off. I mean, we see a legless midget right on the back of some guy's back being worn like a backpack, trying to sell them drugs or something. Other people doing the same thing. There's fire. There's a lot of firelight, and there's a funeral. There's a couple of bodies that have died or literally burning on a pyre. I mean, it's kind of a wild scene there. They find this other woman. I forgot her name. I'm sorry. Who they're supposed to meet. And she gets them their room, and now. And by the way, on their way there, Miriam got killed right by some shot down in the street. And at that point, they really do seem like these cops seem like Nazi officers, right out of the SS. They're just brutalizing people. But in that room, now we do end up at the room, and again, it's like this old abandoned building. It's filthy. There is a blood-stained mattress on the floor. The Key's water is broken, and she's going to give birth, and the only one left is her and Theo now. And again, he's been drinking all film, right, sort of self-medicating, but he stopped doing that. We noticed for a while ago. We remember because when he does pull it out, this time he'd have been forgiven taking a drink, but I don't think he does. I think he just uses the liquor to sort of to scrub up, right, to sterilize his hands. And she does give birth, and again, this is the opposite. The whole story of the manger in the Bible, right, was that it was terrible, right, that nobody would take them in, that Mary had to give birth in a manger, a dirty manger with all those animals. But boy, that is idyllic compared to the room the Key has to give birth in. It is just, as fallen as you can get. It's just dirty and filthy and cold. You can see their breath when they're breathing. But she does give birth, and for a second it looks like she gave birth to a stillborn, and your heart kind of clenches, and then it does start moving and cries, and it works out, and there is this amazing, miraculous sort of a moment, right, with the two of them, and it is almost Joseph and Mary here in the manger. Again, they've a fallen manger, even as mangers go. But again, the next morning, here comes Sid. Now he's figured out that they're wanted, and he can get money if he turns them in. He sort of kidnaps them. They do eventually, with the help of the gypsy woman, who as soon as she sees the baby is just like, falls to her knees, right, and then sort of helps them escape. But then Luke and the boys show up, and they take Key for a bit, and then Theo has to kind of commandeer his way to this blown-out building where, again, there's a fire. The military has shown up, and it's literally got a cannon pointed and firing into this. And this is just war of all against all. It's a Hobbesian sort of end of everything kind of thing, right? And because you see people come out, almost remind you of the famous Goya painting, 5th of May, right? Where they come out and they all put their hands up and right, they just fucking mow them all down. But Theo ends up upstairs he does make his way upstairs. And again, there's chickens running around. This place has been a makeshift home to these refugees. And he does find her. Luke has her, though, kind of points the gun at him. But then Luke, we see a whole other side of Luke, right, where he starts crying. I forgot how light they are, what they're like. And he's got literally tears running down but he's also firing. He's like, how can there be any freedom when they don't let us have our dignity? So the fight's still going. He has to get them out of there, and he kind of gets out. Luke does get off a shot, though, and which will prove to be fatal, right, which goes through, again, pierces his side, almost a reminiscence of the spear through Christ's side. And they do make it out with it, and it's utter, absolute, wild pandemonium, right? As they're trying to go down there, bullets flying everywhere. You don't know how the hell they're gonna get out of there. He's kind of covering Key up, protecting him, and they're going down the stairs. And everybody who sees that she has a baby is just taking it back, and they're making the sign of the cross, and they're going on their knees, and they're just trying to touch the baby like his baby Jesus, literally. And when he makes it out, but the firefight is still going on, all of a sudden one soldier goes, "Halt! Stop your fire! Cease your fire!" Right? And they do stop, and again, this entire firefight, it's like the war itself just stops, and it parts like the fucking Red Sea, man. It is, I mean, one of the most astonishing scenes I've ever seen in any film of it. And at parts to sort of let them out. And they they get, and about, literally, once they're about 10 feet past them all of a sudden one bullet goes off and it all starts up again. Right, but it's like it's closed right up behind them and started. But they do manage to get onto the boat, and they get into that with this weird little tunnel where they have to get onto the boat and get out to the sea. And you see all these markings on the walls. One of them, by the way, at least to me, that seemed like that reminded me of the Lascaux cave paintings, which are the oldest artworks on Earth. And to make the Lascaux cave paintings, our earlier ancestors, again, I think these are as old as 40 and 50,000 years old. Don't quote me on that number. But they would take colored like flour or pigments and chew it up with clay in their mouth and with a hollow out of reed and spit it onto the wall. And it was amazing, actually, how good some of it was, considering how the tools they were using. But also to sign it, the artists, they didn't have. They didn't even have. I don't even know if they had the language or speech yet. They certainly didn't have the writing. And the way they'd sign the painting is that they would put their hands against the wall and they would spin around it, right? And their handprint would be sort of their. Anyway, one of those is on the wall when they go in there. They do manage to get out. One more sacrifice as the gypsy woman doesn't make it out with them, and then they finally, they're out there. They're hoping the human project is going to meet them at this buoy, which is where they're supposed to meet him. They're not sure, and at one point Key looks down and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm bleeding, holy shit, I'm bleeding." And he's like, "No, it's not you, it's me." And you see Theo shows her, he's like, "They got me." And he's been bleeding a lot, and he's starting to get a little bit faint, and you get the feeling this wound of his is fatal. And one last thing he's able to do, right, is he shows her how to burp the baby, which she has, she's never, had to learn. Which, by the way, big deal. Let's just say. But so she's able to do it, and he's like, "Keep her close, Key. Whatever you do, keep her close." And again, the man Theo, who's lost everyone and everything, does get her safely out, and she's like, and then she's like, "I'll name him, Dylan." Or I think it's a her. It is a girl. I'm sorry. I'll name her Dylan. She says, "It's a girl's name too." And he smiles, and it's just so that the first baby, the man, the grieving father, right, who'd gone through all this, saved. Managed to save humanity, maybe, right, itself, and the first baby in 18 years, and it's named after his dead son, and it's the last thing Theo hears before he finally does nod off, and die. And she's sitting there, and literally seconds later, you do see through the fog the big boat come, and it says the Human Project, so it was real. And we're not quite sure, a couple of planes had already gone over them and bombed the place behind them, the camp they left, so we're not 100% sure how this is all going to turn out. But you just see her, and it's just silent for a minute, and she's floating on the water. Theo's slumped over dead and sort of bobbing up and down. The Human Project has come, and then it just goes black. And for a few seconds it's silent, and then all of a sudden you hear and it's this really kind of cool, energetic, sort of hippie-ish song. It says "To the Lucy" actually the first thing you hear is children's laughter, which is how the song starts. And what a brilliant way to end this film, right? It ends with the sounds of children's laughter, which Miriam, remember back in that classroom was talking about what happened in the world when the children's laughter went away. And then it goes into the John Lennon song and the roll credits. It's just an astonishing film, an amazing guy. I hope you guys liked it as much as me. All right.